Our story begins in New York at the Brooklyn Naval Yards, where a black-clad special ops military unit called the Foot is huddled around some kennels with mysterious thrashing creatures inside, sort of like the beginning of Jurassic Park. But instead of Muldoon overlooking the loading procedure, here General Davies is convinced by Colonel Schrader to restart his long-dormant Project Ares, including Substation 16, which has been dark for 20 years. Meanwhile, in Noah Falls, Michigan, 18-year-old Casey Jones starts a bench-clearing brawl in the local men's hockey league. The character is named Casey Jones, and he plays hockey, but that's about where the connection to Casey Jones of yore ends. After the game, when surrounded by floozies, he's surprised to find that one of them is also 18-year-old April O'Neil, his ex-girlfriend, who left months ago to take a job at Channel 6 in New York. She's back in town to pick up the rest of her stuff and wants Casey to come to New York with her. Casey goes home, and we learned he stayed in Michigan to take care of his late-50s mother, Evelyn. Mom thinks Casey isn't living up to his full potential in Noah Falls, working for a minimum wage at a furniture parts manufacturing plant / secret location of Substation 16. Casey's the night watchman, and on a night when he's not expecting any deliveries, a truck rolls up. The Foot secretly loads Schrader and the kennels into Substation 16, and the truck heads out. Down in the lab, Schrader tells one of the soldiers, quote, "Start with the small one. Begin testing right away. Krang is expecting a report by daybreak." They stick a huge syringe in a subject we can't see and remove some spinal fluid for a DNA test that causes the power in the compound to surge, sending Casey into the plant, where he happens upon the secret entrance to Substation 16 by hitting an electrical panel with his hockey stick. The DNA test comes back verified. Schrader says they could finally begin the invasion so they could kill all the subjects. Casey wanders through Substation 16, and we finally meet some turtles. Leonardo, Donatello, and Raphael, all tied up naked, with no weapons, pads, or masks. Leo lures Casey close enough to use Casey's watch in a complex but sudden escape. Leo apologizes for destroying the watch, and Casey's like, "You could talk?" And then Schrader sounds the alarm, and we're into our first action sequence as the three turtles have to find Michelangelo and escape Substation 16 with their unlikely night watchman sidekick. This first action sequence really focuses on reintroducing the physicality of the turtles while doing some quick character building along the way. Leo's leading, Don's rewiring the elevator to get out of the substation, Raph has attitude and a few clunky lines like, "We're trained in ninjutsu, and we don't just know it, we serve it for breakfast." When they find Michelangelo, Leo uses his unconscious body as a shield, and we learn that the turtle's shells are bullet-resistant. The chase continues up the elevator shaft, and Casey hijacks a truck he drives while the turtles defend unconscious Mikey. You get them using found objects that look like their weapons of choice, and a pretty fantastic showing of strength, with Leonardo lifting a forklift at one point. The thing is, these new turtles go into their shells a lot more, like a turtle shell from Super Mario Bros. Raph uses his body like a projectile all over the place, jumping, sucking in all his appendages, and ramming people and/or obstacles. When the Foot take to SUVs after the truck gets on the road, the turtles jump out the back in their shells. Leo slides under an SUV and pops up to grab its bumper, and when Raph is fighting on top of another SUV, Leo uses his shell again to wedge under the SUV's front tire, forcing it into an aerial spin. The Foot managed to force the truck off the cliff by firing missiles at it from a helicopter, and the truck lands in an icy lake. Everyone escapes except Michelangelo. The Foot are racing after them, and they're about to fight to the probably death when Michelangelo breaks back through the ice, jumps on the roof of the Humvee, pulls the driver out, and uses the driver's twin pistol holster as nunchucks to take out the rest of the oncoming Foot. The turtles drag Casey to an abandoned barn outside town to make some weapons and put on black eye masks. Casey makes an offhand remark about the turtles not being from this planet, but this is quickly corrected by Leo, who tells them that there were 4 sewer turtles touched by ooze, trained by a giant rat in ninjutsu, and named after Renaissance painters. Don rigs a radio from a car GPS unit, and they contact Splinter, telling him they've been kidnapped by Project Ares and they're coming home. They convince Casey to help them get back to New York because the Foot knows that he helped them escape. So Casey agrees to do this to protect his mom, but says he's having a hard time telling them apart, so he switches the turtles' black eye masks for the familiar color-coded ones. And Raph says, "What am I, a kid's toy?" Casey decides to sneak the turtles back to New York by agreeing to go back with April and putting the turtles in her U-Haul, which leads to a comedy scene where the turtles are hiding behind bushes and using their ninja skills to enter the U-Haul as Casey lies to April. As they're driving cross country, the turtles unpack most of April's stuff to make a traveling living room in the back of the U-Haul, and Don tethers April's MacBook to her iPad 3G so they could Google search Project Ares. They learn it has something to do with altered species and mutagens, and it started 17 years ago, the year they were oozed. Mikey overheard something about an invasion, and Don posits, apropos of nothing, that they are infiltrators of the U.S. government using a secret program to build a mutant army. Thanks, Donatello and Google. Mikey jokes about finding April attractive. Raph and Leo get in a fight when Raph says he's better off on his own, which causes Casey to have to pull over and distract them by giving them pizza. Turns out that Schrader picked up their transmission from the barn on the GPS radio, so he's been following the turtles and sending people for Splinter in New York. The Foot and Shredder attack Casey and April at night in New Jersey. They're all on motorcycles and quickly force the turtles to reveal themselves to April and move everyone and the fight to an elevated train speeding towards New York. The action sequence is simultaneous with one taking place in the sewers of New York, where we find Bebop and Rocksteady, described as looking exactly like their cartoon counterparts, putting C4 on a sewer valve. They blow it open, and our first time seeing Splinter is in the prolonged intercut action scene. The turtles fight on the subway, taking out the Foot on motorcycles and forcing Schrader and the remaining Foot into an abandoned subway car. Splinter uses a variety of traditional ninja weaponry and fights in a way best described as a cross between Daredevil and Yoda in Attack of the Clones. Bebop and Rocksteady use guns and their natural mutant talents, like Bebop snaps a sword with his tusks and Rocksteady catches ninja stars unharmed. Back in the subway, everyone but Raph splits off to go rescue Splinter, and Raph stays behind to fight hand-to-hand with the Foot and Schrader. Schrader is tougher than he looks, but so is Raph, and then Schrader bleeds blue. Raph thinks it's weird, but keeps hitting him, jumping on Schrader's back. Then Schrader grows blades through his skin like an X-Man porcupine. Raph kicks Schrader in the face and jumps out the back of the train in time to turn around and see half of Schrader's face ripped off, exposing a yellow-skinned thing with an impossibly wide mouth filled with sharp teeth. Michelangelo says it later, Schrader, more like Shredder. And that's where the script goes wonky. Everyone meets up with Splinter in time to save him from Bebop and Rocksteady. Everyone fills April in. Raph tells everyone about Shredder, and Splinter suddenly drops the bomb that it's not Donatello's mutant army theory. They're actually all from Dimension X, a dimension parallel to ours that sometimes touches ours, causing chaos. In this case, weird weather patterns. Splinter says they need to track the weird weather to find out if it's converging, because if it is, a portal to Dimension X will be opened on that spot. They decide to do this at Channel 6, where it's revealed that April is more like an intern and wasn't as big time as she'd been representing to Casey. The turtles have to sneak around the Channel 6 building and eventually get to the machine they need that tells them about the weather patterns. The weird weather started while they were at Substation 16 and is slowly converging on New York. Schrader, in a fixed skin, shows up with the Foot looking for April, and when it looks like there's no escape, the building shakes, Dimension X overlaps, and an elevator shaft is turned into an alien-looking waterfall the turtles dive into, only to surface in Dimension X. Dimension X is basically like Pandora, so they're wandering around when they see a flash of the New York sewer. Casey and April make it back through before it blinks out of existence, but the turtles are trapped in Dimension X because they've found a tattooed and scarred warrior turtle who greets them with, quote, "The prophecy lives, the four brothers have returned," unquote. Flashback time. Dimension X has been at war forever because this gray brain thing in a four-armed hydraulically powered body named Krang wants to rule everything and kill everybody. 5 turtle elders predicted the four brothers would be the ones to defeat Krang, so the parents of the turtles entrusted their kids to their best friend, Master Splinter, to train the turtles in the real world. Oh, and their parents died helping them escape to the other world, we're told. But not before making them custom weapons, the swords, sai, nunchucks, and bow staff. After all that talk of destiny, the Turtle Warrior tells them that Krang has completed a 20-year project called the Technodrome, but, quote, Dimension X is rich in natural resources but low on infrastructure, unquote. So the plan is not to invade Earth, but to bring the Technodrome to New York, suck all the power from the power grid, and take a fully operational Technodrome back into Dimension X, ending the war that he could have ended earlier if he hadn't started his mass murdering spree with the unions and skilled workers, apparently. Anyway, Turtle Warrior was the guardian of one of 4 orbs kept on the 4 corners of Dimension X and guarded by Turtle Warriors. If you assemble the 4 orbs, you can make a portal into the other world, and that's what the moving weather patterns have been on our side. It's been Krang assembling the orbs. Then with the line, quote, "No more buts, Rockstar. There's only one more thing to do now. You gotta believe," unquote. The turtles mysteriously return to New York to face the Technodrome instead of staying in Dimension X and doing it there. The turtles call Splinter a liar because he is, and he says that if he had told four children about their responsibilities in a dimension full of monsters, they never would have gotten any sleep. I don't know why mutants are better, but the script doesn't seem concerned with that either. So it doesn't matter if they caught him because this was their one reason for being born, etc. Splinter tells them to be men and believe, and we're off for the conclusion. The weather patterns converge, and the final action sequence takes place in three separate sections. April and Casey and Splinter try to shut down the power grid, which is being protected by Bebop, Rocksteady, and Shredder in his human form for some reason. The police and army take on Krang's soldiers. Donatello gives one a shot in the jewels, so I'm guessing they're not rock soldiers. And then the turtles have to race the Technodrome and get the orbs from Krang. They have to race across the rooftops in New York, and they do some pretty cool turtle parkour, like grinding on their shells or tucking into them to fit into tight spots. Then they get to the Technodrome and find Krang in the command center in the middle of three giant rotating rings and standing over the four orbs. He doesn't say that much. Krang only has two lines in the whole script. Your father looked the same right before I slit his throat, and at your final moments. He stretches out to be giant like in the cartoon, and all the turtles fight him. Casey cuts the power, and Raph impales Krang with one of Leo's swords. Right as the Technodrome is getting sucked back into Dimension X, the turtles escape with the orbs, and the military blows up the Technodrome, sending only the burning wreckage back to Dimension X, where it's greeted by the friendly mutants with Ewok-like cheering, I'm sure. For some reason, the movie isn't over because the turtles have to return the orbs to the corresponding four corners of the globe, where they will return to Dimension X and train the replacement Turtle Warriors, never seeing each other again. I guess. April gets a job for Channel6.com, and eventually Casey moves in with her, and then we see each of the turtles and their trainees, and Michelangelo has a hot chick turtle warrior training with him, and that's the end of the movie.